All right, well, we're 2 minutes past the hour. We're going to go ahead and fire this thing up. Let's get started. If you want to jump us ahead, Kyle, the topic today is how to engage and qualify your website visitors with AI. So we had this poll going as people are coming in. Let me end this and share some results. So the question was, do you use a chatbot on your website today? We got 55% yes, 45% no. So the cool thing I think about this topic today is we're not talking about just like the traditional chatbots. And I always felt it was, to me, interesting in the AI space is people always assumed a chatbot meant AI. And in most instances previously, it didn't. They were rules based. It was just like, we set up all these rules. If this happens, then you do this. And what we're talking about today is true smart technology, infusing things like natural language processing and machine learning so that you're not just having a bot that's got some rules behind it. You're having a bot that can actually learn and respond on the fly to things and truly create a more robust customer experience by mashing up human and machine, like the best of both capabilities. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. So if you want to jump to the next one, Kyle, we do quick introductions with Lauren and Kyle. So I'm Paul, if you're not familiar with me, founder and CEO of Marketing AI Institute, and PR 2020 is my agency. But I want to let Kyle and Lauren just take a moment, kind of tell us about Drift and their roles with Drift. Lauren, you want to go first?
Sure thing. Nice to meet you all. I'm Lauren. I'm a senior group product manager over the AI group. I work really across the aisle between the business side and the go-to-market business side and the product and engineering side. So I love spending time with customers, understanding where the market's headed, and then making sure our roadmap is getting us there. And so before working on conversational AI at Drift, I spent 10 years in sports tech, and I first got to work with AI ML teams while building smart cameras at Huddle. It's been a great space to learn in, work with some really, really smart engineers that spend a lot of time really, as I mentioned, crossing the bridge from my background and more of the business side with that tech and engineering side. So I'm a learner, lifelong learner here as well, learning how AI can power the future of conversational products. Over to you, Kyle.
Yeah, and Laura's a total boss, by the way. Like, she's literally driving our product strategy forward on the AI front, and a huge role in our go-to-market part too. And so we love having you on the team. It's great. I work as a business value consultant here. My name is Kyle, and I spent the last 2 years specializing in our AI capabilities and really helping our sales team and our customer success team showcase those capabilities to our potential and current customers. So I've worked with hundreds of organizations that have evaluated this technology, and almost 100 that have adopted it inside their enterprise. So I'm very familiar with the value that it brings to these businesses and the way to implement it effectively and the kinds of problems that it solves. And thank you, Paul, for having us on today.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I've always loved about our partnership is we have a shared vision that AI is about value creation. It is not about just the latest, hottest technology or the hypey, trends of, this is just a buzzword. It's real tech that makes processes smarter to either reduce costs or accelerate revenue within a company. And if you're not focused on the value it's going to create, then you're just wasting time and money pursuing things. And I think that's why we've always worked together so well on State of Marketing AI report, which I know we're going to talk about a little bit. We're exploring ways to do more education together because, I think we both organizations believe that if we can get people to understand AI and learn about fundamental use cases to apply it to, that we can collectively help really move the industry and these businesses forward. And, so I love our partnership, and it's really cool to kind of end the AI in Action series with this session with you all. So with that, the next slide just gives a recap, our 6 partners that we did these AI in Action sessions with. This is the final one. So thank you again to those sponsors. The next slide gives us a quick recap of the sessions we've had. So last week we did creative workflows, taking one ad, turned it into 4,000 variations with Celtra. Pandata talked about ethics of AI. Lilt talked about localization, the ability to take content and localize it to audiences, geographic, demographic. And then Persado, we got into language personalization and creativity. Market Muse yesterday taught us about content strategy and production using AI. And today it's all about engaging and qualifying website visitors with Drift. Quick housekeeping items, my final slide here. We have the Q&A box going, so don't hesitate to jump in there and ask questions throughout. I'll be monitoring that while Lauren and Kyle are doing their thing. Hashtags there. Any technical difficulties, we've got our team on chat. Don't hesitate to reach out to Kathy there. All the content will be available on demand. We will publish all 6 of these sessions on demand at no cost to everybody. And then the AI in action, that was the link. So I'm going to kind of fade into the background here and let Kyle and Lauren do their thing, and I'll jump in when I've got some thoughts or questions to add.
Thanks, Paul.
Right on. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, and for everyone on the call, like, please do fire in your questions and chats. Find us very interruptible, and Paul, if you see something, if you'll have questions, cut us off and jump in, and we'll make this as valuable as possible to the folks that are here today. As Paul mentioned, this is AI in action: how to engage and qualify your website visitors, and we're going to talk about what life is like from a chat and website standpoint before AI. We'll get into the potential of AI and how it can be used to drive outcomes via chat and engagement on the website. And then we're going to cover a couple case studies with some customers that we have set this up with over the last few years, the problems they had, how they solved it, and what their results have been like as they've gone down this journey in partnership with us. And we'll leave you with a couple takeaways. And like I said, fire your questions as they come up, and we'll look forward to the conversation. So I'm going to kick this off with a stat that everybody's seen. And the stat is that 67% of the buyer's journey is complete before buyers want to contact sales. And this stat is 10 years old. It's from Serious Decisions, although you've probably seen versions of it everywhere. And I'd say this number is probably more like 75, 80% in a post-pandemic reality where more and more of this stuff is happening online. But it's basically a fancy way of saying that even CEOs are going to Google you before they buy something from you. And this was initially published and used as a validation of the website as a viable marketing tool. That's how old this stat is. And it's been used to justify all number of expenses, many of them actually involving AI, like AdWords and retargeting and social media and all these devices to drive more traffic to our websites. What we haven't really done or seen until recently is the implications of this stat for the website experience. And that, in a lot of places, for at least 45% of the folks from our poll at the beginning, is what the website looks like today. It's effectively walking into an empty store. And imagine spending a ton of time, money, and energy to get foot traffic into your store, only to leave them without guidance or help for the buyer once they got there. And perhaps there's a lot of information, but there's also thousands of pages in that sitemap, and it's very difficult to find the thing that you're looking for, and you don't know what folks are looking for necessarily when they get there. So we know the website isn't the end all be all, and the first wave of capturing this demand in digital marketing is the use of the form and in the use of live chat. And we all know that the website isn't going to take us from start to finish in the B2B context, and so we found a way to capture this interest, send it over to the sales organization so that we could actually answer your questions. Later, after you were scored, after you were targeted, after you had passed through the plumbing and mechanics of someone's CRM and marketing automation platform, eventually routed to sales, to get a call later and an email later, to set up a meeting later, it's not a great buyer's experience. It's certainly not taking advantage of the intent someone has when they come to the website. So this is the premise on which Drift was initially founded, which is, what if you were there to talk to them and do so in a scalable way? What if we could at least better understand generally what you were looking for and point you in the right direction to continue your research? And that might be an article that you want to read. It might be a salesperson if that's what you want. It might be customer support if that's the reason why you're there. And this is the birth of chatbots. And you see one on the left. This is one on Drift's site right now, or an older one, I should say, from Drift's website, where folks are able to show up and use some buttons and some routing to express their intent generally. Basically, an approximation of why they're there. They can select and then move through and go to the right experience. And this is great because this allowed us to get folks research that they wanted. It allowed us to qualify our site visitors and pass them over to the sales organization. And so this works really well. It was a heck of a lot better than forums and a heck less expensive than staffing your website with a bunch of folks for live chat. But there's an even better experience that's possible. And I would compare, the greeter at Best Buy that points you to the department that you're going to, which might be what the previous chat experience was that I showed, to the Genius Bar at Apple, where you're actually able to sit down with somebody, go through where you're at specifically, what you need specifically, and get help that is contextual to who you are and what you're looking for. And this is an outstanding customer experience. It's personalized, it's fast, it's helpful. It's everything that we strive to accomplish in any customer service endeavor, and certainly on the website as well. But there's a challenge. And this is an example chat from one of our customers. And you can see somebody showed up and they clicked the button that said, yes, I'd like to chat with sales. And we said, team's offline, but we can connect you. What's your email? And instead of typing in their email, they blurted out their actual question, which is, how much is this app? And the bot persisted to try to capture an email because it's rule-based, and that was the skill that had been enabled by their initial intent. And we cycled the chat. We were not able to answer this specific question. The bot was not built to interpret what they were saying here as an inquiry, but rather as an email address. So if we don't compute email address, we weren't able to capture their intent. And what we've learned from experiences like this is that over 50% of the buyers who want to talk to sales will abandon the site before giving you an email address. I'll put it in another way. Your buyers will not let you qualify them until they qualify you first. That's the insight that we've learned from analyzing this data across hundreds of our enterprise customers. And what that means is that when folks show up to the site and they might even click a button that says, yes, I want to talk to sales, they don't mean that literally. It's just the intent that closest approximated their question, which was probably buying related. Maybe they did want to know price. Maybe they did want to know what your app does, or they did want to know what you integrate with or how long it takes to set up. But they didn't want to get that answer from a salesperson. And they didn't want to give you an email address and subject themselves to a raft of follow-up emails that they believe would likely come if they were to do that. Basically, they're going to accept no friction to getting the answers for what they wanted. And what's challenging about this particularly is that every business has a definition of qualification. Almost every BDR or SDR or salesperson in your organization, if you were asking right now, what constitutes a qualified lead, we'd have a definition for that. We'd say, well, it's these 5 things, it's banned, or it's whatever it is for your organization, but that's a known thing. It's one qualification for a business typically. What's interesting is that your buyers have hundreds of definitions of qualified. They may have questions 1, 5, and 20 out of a list of 100, and the next person might ask those same questions in the opposite order, or 3 utterly different questions, but you don't know who these folks are, you don't know what their questions are using an approach like this. So we need a more dynamic approach. We need to understand intent more specifically than the 3 button options presented, but rather the top 100 most common reasons that somebody might come to a website and the questions they may have specifically on your site, specifically about your products, services. And we need to be able to then have the bot change its experience depending on the question or the intent that you're actually asking. And so this is the 3rd wave of conversational marketing that we call virtual selling. But it is a more discrete way of using AI to understand intent at a more granular level, and then change the experience dynamically to make the right recommendation or service up the right content specifically to what you want. And doing so without the massive expense that would otherwise come from doing this with humans, and without the limitations of bots. And that's the needle that we're really threading by infusing NLU and AI into the chat experience on the website.
Realize I was on mute. And from a how this works perspective, I mean, if you think about Google search, 5 years ago when you would search Google, it was basically looking at the specific phrases and exactly what you were asking, and then it would learn. So, I mean, Google search had AI in it, 15 years ago. But in the last few years, there's been these major innovations in these language model training where the machine can actually truly understand what you're asking and then be able to understand, like you're saying, that intent to generate language back. So the machine, the software we use to do our jobs, doesn't know how to do any of that out of the box. Machines don't understand human language. So this whole idea of natural language processing is that machine taking that language in, understanding what is being said, and then being able to generate a reply. And in your case, taking a knowledge base from all the resource of information it has available to it to be able to do things on the fly that otherwise couldn't do.
It's a great example, Paul. You might have even noticed in Google lately, I know I have, like I used to just type like 2 or 3 words around what I actually was looking for in Google and then go through the websites that came up in the search to find what I wanted. Now I will blurt out my full long tail question as if I was asking my friend, and I'll find an answer that's not even in a website. You notice that Google is now surfacing answer snippets from websites, but displaying it above the search results. So they're literally answering my questions and understanding these long tail searches. And in fact, we use the exact same algorithm to power our NLU on the back end that Google uses today to better understand long tail search inquiries. So it's an excellent example, and you're absolutely right.
And that's the thing, is like people experience this stuff every day, but you don't think about Google search as being AI when it's probably one of the original examples we all interfaced with for years and didn't know it.
Yeah, I think the best deploys of AI are sublime. Like if AI is done right, you shouldn't know or care that it's AI. And to your point, people use AI technology all the time without ever commenting like, man, that's some pretty slick AI. They're just say that's a helpful experience.
I always joke, like when you get routed around an accident with Google Maps, nobody ever said, thank God for machine learning. But like you wouldn't have gotten routed around that accident without machine learning. But it's not, it's just seamless in your life. So you don't think of it.
One of the things that keeps coming up here is, that AI feels like magic a little bit.
Yeah.
And it feels like we're taking the humans out of the decision-making or out of the driver's seat. And one of the things I want to share in my section before we get started is a little perspective on how essential and critical the human still is to the process. I think what can scare a lot of marketers is that they start to lose control over their buyer's experience. And what we want to do at Drift is put both the marketer and the customer in the driver's seat to make better decisions, more informed decisions with the types of things that let the humans on their team have, like, build better relationships, have better conversations, and really take away that perception that you lose the control, that it happens in a black box. Before I get started, I'll just share what that would look like. I mean, even when you mentioned training the machine, that's a human training a machine. It's either a human on our team or we put the human marketer in control there. We at Drift want to help unpack that mystery. So the 2 ways we start to think about AI, even for the purposes of today, there's the AI assisted conversations that you've seen Kyle share. We train the machine to understand and how to reply in your brand's voice. So those are all human decision and input go into that training so that it's customized. And the other side of it is AI generated insights. We're spending a little bit more of our presentation today on those AI assisted conversations, but we're starting to pioneer what AI generated insights look like too, which is the other half of it, which are surfaced up to the marketer to let you make better decisions with the information you'd have to spend a lot of time reading through and sifting through the haystack for. So with that,
Lauren, real quick context. So I loved your idea of like the driver's seat. So what we always teach people is there's actually autonomous vehicles have an industry standard scale to determine autonomy from level 0 to level 5. And the key variable is literally, what does the driver do? Is the driver in control or is the machine in control? And Tesla autopilot today is level 2 because the human is actually still in total control. Even when the machine is driving itself, the driver is still there. And so we think about marketing AI in a very similar way. The machine isn't doing the thing on its own without the human in the loop. We're just trying to go from like all human all the time to part machine. But that just little bit from level 0 to level 1, level 2 can have a massive impact on efficiency and customer experience. So everything we're saying in Drift is great about this messaging and point of view in the market. It is not replacing human. We're not trying to go to full autonomy in any of these things. We're trying to augment what the human is capable of and take the best of both things. So
That's exactly it. Good context, Paul. Love that Tesla comparison. So let's start with another good stat. I'll ask for the next slide, Kyle. 80% of marketers believe more than a quarter of their tasks will be intelligently automated in 5 years. This is from the State of Marketing AI report, link in the chat, which is a pretty scary number if you think as a marketer, you know barely 20% of what there is to know about AI. So that's why I emphasize what we'll see on the next slide, bring it to life, is really like we still see AI in a black box, and we at Drift want to help get rid of that black box. Even our first product really perpetuated that effect of needing to maintain that black box, or marketers not getting enough visibility into what's going on with their customer journey. And we learned by shipping some of the first iterations that that's something marketers really care about. It's one thing to entrust that experience to a machine or a conversation designer, but we really want to help our customers understand AI, break down the black box effect, make it as simple, visible, and usable as you want it to be. So with that, let's talk about what the customer experience looks like with and without AI. The basic building block of a better conversation starts with putting that customer in the driver's seat, knowing that your bot is going to be able to serve them on their terms as they're qualifying you before you're prioritizing qualifying them. So without AI, you see we ask a question or say we have a question, and we miss that opportunity to learn the buyer question when you're routing them through a decision tree format. If you have more open text and more confidence that your bot will be able to field that open text instead of automatically routing to a human if you don't understand, you can field the question and then recognize a high intent question and immediately suggest a meeting. So what that means for marketers is really that you can let the customer drive, as we mentioned, and learn how to serve them better. Letting the customer drive helps them start to trust bots, start to trust that the bot isn't just there to qualify them, but there to serve them, there to help themselves serve themselves the way any of us really use Google today, knowing that that information is there and they'll really be able to find it without just immediately raising their hand for a human. And that means that the team can spend more time building those relationships, less time answering those common questions. And again, that might just be that 0 to 1 level of letting the AI help you be more efficient. The other factor is learning how to serve them better. So that AI insights side of the equation surfaces things from trending topics, new novel detected topics across conversations that you don't have the time to read all of them, and empowers you to adjust your experience if you want to serve buyers better. You see a couple examples here of higher drop off or themes that will help you get alerted on high intent conversations. How do we put that into action with Drift? There's really 4 parts of it today. First is the ability to scale those human-like conversations. Second, learning to serve buyers with those insights. Finally, getting real-time alerts for those high-intent conversations based on what we recognize, the topic that the buyer is speaking about, and learning the next best action to serve them. So overall, it's a strategy transformation if you buy into it, but you really do got to start with that belief that you're creating a better buyer experience. If you do that, customers will tell you more about their intent. They will use open text to tell you more about themselves and what they're interested in, so that you can learn how to serve them better and scale what's most effective at those trends across which channels and tactics are working best. Ultimately, when those 2 things come together, that's when you boost your profit to help the humans on your team spend more time with those high impact decision stage conversations. That's it for me. Let's hear from our customers.
Yeah, so we're going to go through a couple case studies with folks who have gone down this journey with us. Both of these customers have been using this technology for over a year at this point, and they have some pretty remarkable stories. And they're very different, actually, in how they, or like the problems that they were going after and the way that we set it up. And so the first one that I'll share is PTC. Lauren's going to tell us about Okta after this. But PTC, Parametric Technology Corporation, is a company in Boston that we've been working with for years. And they lacked what they'd call predictive analytics, and their lead qualification process required a 12-question form and then be available to take a phone call. So not exactly buyer-centric. And some color commentary, because I was able to work with PTC directly on setting this up. Mariana, who you hear from later, she's the Senior Vice President of Digital Strategy and Operations at PTC, had a very insightful thing. And she said that we have been thinking about who comes to our website and qualifying leads based on title. And there's like a line. It's like underneath this line is probably not a qualified buyer. Over this line probably is. And that was the way that they had set it up based off of the limitations of forms and the information that you can capture via forms. And her insight was that titles don't matter. What matters is intent. And sometimes somebody who is a manager at a company is an up and comer who sees a problem that PTC or anybody else could solve, and they're keen to drive change and make a name for himself in that organization. And PTC and their sales team wants to talk to that person. You could also have a vice president that is pretty comfortably sitting in their seat, and not trying to drive change in the organization. And that's not somebody who's going to, facilitate change that would represent by transitioning to PTC. So they don't care about your title anymore. They care about your intent and what you're trying to do and the conversation that makes the most sense to have. And so we needed a better way to understand and classify that intent, because that was what their sales team and the marketing organization truly cared about at PTC. So we worked in partnership with two other technologies to create an end-to-end workflow to establish this inside PTC's organization. The first one was 6 Sense Account Intelligence. And 6 Sense, as their ABM platform, was very valuable in understanding what kinds of behaviors, actions, terms people were searching for. Basically, what were they doing before they got to the website? And that gave us a huge clue as to intent and the right conversation that folks wanted to have when they come to the website. But we didn't stop there. We used Drift's revenue and acceleration platform with AI to refine that intent to the actual question that that person was interested in when they came to the site. And that's the technology that Laura and I have been showing thus far. Finally, we used People AI CRM automation to categorize these tags, capture this intent information from both 6 Sense and Drift's platform and AI, and program that into the CRM to automate the right kinds of workflows that needed to happen after the fact, which could be a nurture campaign routed to the sales organization, the right kind of follow-up, and the right kind of post-website engagement, ownership, and action that needed to be taken from there. Mariano won an award at Serious Decisions for setting up this workflow, and we were really pleased to play a small part in that. At the end of the day, what happened was 20,000 conversations with prospects took place on the website. That would have been impossible for their sales team to do manually, and it would not have been as rich as if we had done it with decision trees. And this is the reason that 1,200 net new accounts were added to the CRM and processed by the sales team using this workflow. That's huge for PTC, because PTC is a huge, they're an older company, like they're a public company, they have a huge customer base. Like 1,200 net new accounts was very material for their sales organization and for their marketing department. And this playbook we've been able to stamp out across 17 different countries now. And so we've got bots operating in different languages. This workflow is happening globally through PTC. And PTC has like 4 business divisions. The smallest one does about 250 million in revenue. So this is global scale that we're able to achieve these kinds of results with a complex business like PTC.
And Kyle, real quick, one thing I just want to point out is, the results are great, the 1,200 net new accounts, but think about the data living in those 20,000 conversations. And once you truly understand AI and its ability to understand language and find sentiment and find intent, all those conversations, like call tracking and call recording years ago, is things like all that voice data that's sitting there to learn from. And so I know that's part of Drift's playbook, is this ability to not only, drive actions, but to actually capture all this information so that the company can learn about its own customers and prospects and their intent, but also to continually build a smarter experience. And so it's just, again, like data is what fuels AI. And that is a lot of conversations with a lot of text data to learn from.
It's an incredible opportunity to understand the voice of your customer in their own words based on how they express themselves in chat on the website. Absolutely. Think about 20,000 conversations of what that could teach you around what people truly want when they come to your website. Like, what questions are left unanswered? What kinds of things generate the most excitement? I'll give you an example from Drift's own usage. But when we launched Revenue Acceleration as a platform a year ago, I remember the date, it was August 4th, because we are tracking what happened in AI on our website the week after. And by August 11th, the top 2 questions on our website were, what is revenue acceleration? And what is Prospector, which was a new aspect of our platform that we launched at the exact same time. And that's great. Like, it's not, maybe not unexpected that you come up with this big product launch and suddenly people come to your website and start talking about it. But we were able to categorize the intent of those questions and use that to inform the supporting content that we went to market with after that launch. So what did we talk about in our webinars? What did we talk about in our blog articles and our follow-up pieces that accompanied that launch was informed directly by the feedback that we got from our customers as they expressed themselves on the website. And that allowed us to be more on message and helpful in how we communicated and reinforced that launch to the market. So Mariana, she's fantastic. She was able to provide a quote to put it in her own words, but she said, never settle for what already exists. Adopt an attitude of continuous process improvement, embrace technology, and work with amazing partners. That's how you conquer the world. We now have a new path forward. So special thanks to Mariana and the whole entire PTC team, as well as our friends at People AI and 6 Sense for partnering with us in this program. It's an outstanding result, and we're super happy to have been a part of that.
Let's hear from another customer. Y'all know Okta, single sign-on and identity verification. They have been growing. So their business challenge has been how to rapidly scale and grow what's already working. If you think about that conversational storefront slide that Kyle shared way earlier, it made me think of Okta, this classic business challenge. You got them in, you're bought into being there to greet them, but it's working so well that you can't keep up that human experience at scale. The line's too long. So classic business challenge of supply and demand. This time, the demand for the human conversation, the customer-centric experience. So they needed to replicate that customer experience at scale, help their team and buyers decide how to spend their time. This is after they'd already implemented Drift, bought into that conversation, that outlet, getting a lot of demand to speak to a human. So they needed to increase the ability to capture intent in a way that added that value to the customer on their site, not just qualifying them to help their team pick and choose. So if you take me to the next slide, we'll hear a little bit more about what we implemented for them. This was our traditional classic VSA, really part of that revenue acceleration platform, a virtual selling assistant that would align marketing and sales, that would create a virtual chat experience without manual programming and save time for the sales and customer teams for that inbound motion. We saw great results with them too. Drift became the fastest channel to convert MQL to pipeline, with a 30% quarter-over-quarter increase in the pipeline influenced in the first 6 quarters at a 2-time higher conversion rate from MQL to SQL with that AI virtual selling assistant. Don't just take it from me. Rodolfo, who leads their acquisition and conversion optimization, said he really pointed out this dynamic that we see a lot with our customers. Marketing not only needs to understand the buyer, but understand what success looks like to sales if they want to help them drive revenue, align with those goals to directly impact the relevant metrics. And he found that Drift was the most direct way to create that impact, accelerating pipeline velocity and allowing them to meet people, customers, where they are. So for some takeaways across our case studies here, the future of digital commerce, of that digital buyer experience, really does put the customer in control and let the marketer drive too. And AI is what helps you do that at scale, create that customer-centric experience at scale, creating engaging and personalized buyer experiences on your website through those chat conversations, aligning the multiple departments on goals, and saving time, resources, and energy, not only for your customer teams, but for your customers. That's it for me. Kyle, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, so if you guys want to learn more, of course, go to drift.com and you can experience our own use of AI on our own site and learn more about our revenue acceleration platform. You can, of course, hit up Lauren or myself as well, and we can help you out and send you in the right direction if you want to learn more about Drift. We've mentioned this before, but definitely encourage you to check out the 2021 State of Marketing AI report that we work with Paul and his team to develop. Great insights in here over how folks are using AI, what their perspectives are, and some benchmark data to get a better idea of what the landscape looks like as it relates to AI in the marketing space. I think that's what we have in terms of prepared content today. But we'd welcome everybody to submit any questions that they have. And Paul, I think you've got a few too, if you want to, take us through some kind of common questions that we might get.
Let's do it. And real quick, I'll run through these. I think I got 2 Institute slides, just a little background for everybody. So one, if you're not familiar, you can check it out, marketinginstitute.com, tons of free resources, beginner's guide, on-demand webinars, including ones featuring Kyle, just a bunch of great stuff there to check out. And then the last slide, Marketing AI Conference is coming up September 13th and 14th. It's a virtual event. Keynotes from Cade Metz, the New York Times, Karen Howell from MIT Tech Review. Leo's got a Chief Product Officer at Drift has a session there. So definitely check that out. There's an AI in action code there for you. All right, well, if we want to stop the share, we can just go into Q&A. So if you have questions, go ahead and shoot those either in the chat or the Q&A. I've got one about getting ramped up. So one of the things I always find is people think AI, one, you have to be a massive enterprise to use it. 2, you have to have a ton of data. So when you look at an organization, say, what does it take to build a smarter customer experience, build a smarter chatbot? What is the kind of beginner level? Is there a minimum requirement for traffic to the site, data needed for this to work?
Yeah, Lauren, should I take this one? I think I get this question the most because I'm participate in a lot of our sales processes around this, and so people ask this all the time. It's a great question, and I think the first comment I'll make is that folks' instincts are absolutely spot on in that it's garbage in, garbage out. So every AI-based system is only going to be as good as the quality and quantity of data that go into building that system. So that is absolutely true. Now, what we've done at Drift is use our time and expertise in the market to shorten that requirement for our customers in terms of time to value and what do you need to get started. And we call that, this is what we call our base model. And it's basically, it's exactly 100 million conversations that have taken place on the Drift platform that we have already annotated, built out into an AI model that we can put live on someone's site in pretty short order. And
so pre-trained on third-party data, not necessarily having to be trained on their data.
Yeah, it's all conversations that have happened on websites talking about sales and marketing things. Okay. And so that's we have, for example, 347 different ways that folks have asked, what is your price on a website, already categorized. And the more representative sentences you have like that, the better we'll be able to extrapolate intent the next time someone shows up, because chances are they're going to phrase their question in a way that we maybe haven't seen exactly before, but we'll be able to understand that. And so that shortens time to value. We know how to understand when customers say, I want to talk to support. What is your price? Do you integrate with this? Even how they say yes or no. If you were starting from scratch, you would have to build 48 different ways that people affirm something from yeah, sure, yes, why not? All of those things mean the same thing, but that kind of stuff would need to be built out if you were starting this from scratch with an open source model like Amazon Lex or Google Dialogflow or something like that. So the answer is that time to value is going to be shortened because we built this base model that's meant to lower the barriers to enabling these kinds of experiences on your website. Lauren, would you add anything to that?
Just make it a little less intimidating. I mean, you can, the time that it takes is, I don't know, getting started with Drift is typically around 30 days, and it might take us twice that to feel really confident in your model, but we can stand something up within that initial window that continues to learn. You can import, if you're already a Drift customer, you can import conversations that have already been happening in your chat to speed up the process. And then we'll soon have a couple different options for how you can continue to train the model. You can either do it yourself. We know the conversation design field is a really growing job description, and a lot of enterprises are bringing that role in-house. You can also work with our conversation design team. So there are a number of different ways to take your time or roll it right out immediately and start learning.
That actually kind of leads to the next question, which is, we talked about the human in the loop. What are the skills needed? So, it seems like this whole idea of training AI, which is not going away, like to your point, like we're going to continually see roles being created within organizations that didn't exist a year ago. And a lot of it is going to be around training and optimizing AI functions, being the human that's looking at what the AI is doing and finding ways to continually optimize it, whether it's labeling text or looking at the responses it gave and saying this was good response, this was a bad response. The machine needs to be trained and it needs to learn what is good and what is not. And so when you are all looking at kind of like the skill sets needed on a team that's going to be adopting this kind of technology, how are they evolving, and what kind of training does Drift even provide to help onboard teams and get them ready to do some of these new things that they weren't doing before?
What do you think, Lauren?
I find myself reflecting on the job description that I've seen posted on the internet in different ways. There's a number of blog posts. I just sent one to a friend that described the requirements for the job. But I really think that two things that stand out to me are customer obsession and use of language. So that customer obsession really helps a conversation designer pick up on the nuance, pick up on how to make it more buyer centric, do the process that it takes to really score whether the assistant understood the buyer and provided them with the best outcome. The other being language. So a big emphasis in a lot of these job descriptions is not only the attention to detail in language, but a diversity of experience and background and perspective when it comes to language. We hire conversation designers that speak multiple languages so that they can better understand that intent and train the model to be more human-like from multiple human experiences. So those are the two things that stick out to me most about the role. Maybe round that out, Kyle, with something that occurs to you.
I mean, I thought I'd have to be a data scientist to do my job, and was terrified. Like when I first got into talking about conversational AI with folks, I was sure that, I was going to have to answer for the mechanics of our algorithm and would just be exposed as not knowing any of that stuff. And so I don't think that's a requirement. And I do think that, I know I felt that way. Like, I don't know what you felt about Lauren heading into AI the first time, but I thought I had to be a scientist to know what I was doing or be able to help people with it. But the trend these days is, especially around chat, is low code, no code. You should be able to do it yourself. And I think that is where we're going. That's what we have built in our building. And we want to make this accessible to folks that want the business outcomes that we've been talking about in this, but aren't experts in AI or data science to be able to reap the benefits of this technology.
I love both those answers so much because, again, it's so intimidating. And you both didn't come from AI backgrounds. It's not like you went to school and took, computer science and data science and, machine learning engineering, and yet you're in those fields now, or at least working on the business side of those fields. And I think that's what people do have this misunderstanding, that they're going to need this advanced technical knowledge to use AI tools or hold some function in the future of marketing that is using it. And that is very far from the truth. What AI needs is people who understand how to identify a business problem and how to tell it what to solve. AI is really, really good at repetitive processes, making predictions, language understanding and generation, vision, being able to look at images and identify objects, things like that. It's really good at that. In some cases, superhuman at that. It does not have the ability to set out and find a problem to solve. And it doesn't know what the goals are supposed to be. That's where we as business people, as creatives, as people who do social media, content marketing, advertising, you're the expert at your job. What you need to do is just understand what AI is capable of and then find ways to infuse it into your daily routines to make you better at your job. And the other key for us is always historically, to get better at your job, you had to learn how to use the software. Like you had to okay, I have Drift. I got to go take these 20 classes to learn how to do everything in Drift. The whole idea moving forward is the software is going to keep getting smarter on its own, and that it's going to require less and less investment of your time in learning every single inside out tool. And it's actually going to continually make you better. That seamless thing we started talking about, where it's just going to like keep getting better and better. And you're going to keep being able to dedicate more of your time that you're uniquely qualified to do as a human to do things like strategy and empathy and, looking at things from a creative perspective. Like that's really hard to give to machines. And I think that's the key is you're the expert at your domain. You can think from a business perspective. And if you just have a base level understanding of AI, you can find creative ways to use it to reduce costs and accelerate revenue. And Drift Inside or Drift Plus, like that's a great place to go learn. I know like Mark Killens and that team are creating tons of phenomenal content and courses and stuff like that. And we have some mutual partnerships where, again, Kyle, we've worked together to create some stuff. So I think for marketers, the opportunities are massive. Like, again, Lauren and Kyle, you said it, like, this is not, years ago, you didn't sit down and say, oh, I'm going to be working in AI in 4 years. Like that is, none of us thought about, I didn't think about that. And I own a company dedicated to AI now. And I was a liberal arts major. So that's what we always tell people is like, the future is so massive and almost no one understands this stuff. And then the technical people that do can't explain it in logical ways. And so it takes people like us that can be marketers, but can comprehend what the technical people are saying and then figure out how to explain it in ways that make sense to everybody else. And that's basically where we're at as an industry.
That's right. And to really lean into that lifelong learning. I mean, we want to even keep making Drift Insider better, and are inspired by your content about breaking down that black box effect. I think humans in general, when they're afraid of what they don't know, hide behind that black box and the complexity, and to really, really lean into what you don't know and try to understand it and unpack it a little bit. That's our job for the next couple of years here.
And Kyle, and we'll kind of wrap here, but I loved your point earlier about it is not the VP or the CMO. You cannot, like, the future of marketing and marketing tech is not about what your title is, because AI is so little understood industry-wide right now. Just business and society-wide, there's so little understanding of what it is, that you could be the intern at a company right now and be the one that goes to that one webinar about AI and is like, holy cow, like, I'm spending 40 hours a month creating social posts. You're saying there's a tool that can write my social posts in 4 minutes? Oh, cool. Let me go get the freemium version and try it out. And all of a sudden, you're the one that just brought a way to make your organization better as an intern. So titles mean nothing moving forward. It is going to be the people that have that intrinsic motivation to seek out the knowledge, find smarter ways to do things, and be willing to be vulnerable and say, like, I don't get this stuff, but I'm going to go figure it out because I know nobody else gets it. So why not me?
Yeah. And I think this is why I'm so excited about what Lauren and her team are building around the data component of this. And like, I'm imagining, like, we're going to be very quickly at a place where we'll be able to combine the types of terms that you search to get to the site, plus the topics that you wanted to then chat about, to build a buying profile to say that, like, I don't care if this person says they're the intern. People who search these terms and then ask these questions buy 65% of the time. So we're going to treat this like a hot lead, despite whatever else we think we know about them, and focus more on how they're behaving and how they're expressing themselves to create the right experience. So I think it's pretty cool what's coming here.
Any final thoughts? I mean, I think we just kind of like that. We just went to the 30,000 foot view of like why this all matters, which is cool. But any final thoughts for either of you before we sign off on the final episode of our AI in Action pre-Macon series?
One's at the tip of my tongue based on what Kyle just said, which is I really want to help marketers create those one-to-one experiences at scale. And right now, frequently marketers are trying to replicate personalization by saying, if you came to our website, that means you're an MQL and we'll send you down whatever tactic or channel. And as marketing is getting smarter, what we want to empower you to do is say, wow, this buyer asked this question on our site. And so they're getting we're going to follow up with them specialized to their behaviors and their conversations. So ultimately, one-to-one at scale is behavioral intent combined with conversational intent to make it really, really relevant to that individual.
I've just noticed that we found ourselves talking a lot about accessibility in this past hour. And I think that's the thing I hope everyone takes away, is that stuff like this is more accessible than you might think. And there's great companies and great partners out there that are ready and willing to help. So like Lauren said, lean in, be brave, and give us a call. We're happy to help.
Great way to wrap it. Well, Kyle and Lauren, thank you so much. And thank you to Drift for being a longtime loyal partner of the Institute. And, I know we got some other big things we're going to work on together, and I can't wait to do that. And just a last call to action, if you haven't registered for Marketing AI Conference, please do join us September 13th and 14th. Use that AI in action code to get 25% off. You'll see Drift there and Leo and that whole team. So again, thank you everybody for being a part of this series. Thanks for joining us today. And Lauren and Kyle, we'll do this again soon. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Kathy.